Well, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Corn, Executive Director of the National Sports Media Association in my downtown office in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and happy to be joined today by three pros in the industry. I'll go from my top left on my screen, Tom Boman, Vice President for Broadcast Operations for Learfield. Next to him, Leon Carter, who has been in this. We've all been in it for a long time. Leon's at the it's at the Cardinal. Leon's at the Athletic, and then Howard Deneroff down there next to me is after a long career at Westwood One is now on his own a little bit with standby media. If you want some help with your demo reels, he's your guy, and he's also running the Hall of Excellence Museum in Las Vegas that is started by our good friends Tom Brady and Jim Gray. So welcome to our panelists. Welcome to all you guys out there in radio, TV, and digital land. And let's get started. So the premise of this is it's February, and if you are a graduating senior in college, you probably need to find a job if you haven't yet. So I'll ask the panelists. We'll go one by one. Here we are, February of my senior year. What should I be doing? What should I have done if I am looking for a job when I graduate in May? Howard, I'm going to start with you.
Send all your tapes to Tom Boman.
I was waiting for
that. Well, my answer is a little different this year than it would have been last year when I was still with Westwood One. But I think, and Tom, with Learfield has so many different local schools and can talk more from a local perspective, even though Learfield's a national company. I came from the national broadcast side, so it was rare that I was hiring somebody just out of school. But I would always say to them, nothing's impossible. You could always send me something to listen to and review, because it doesn't matter where you came from. If you have experience and you're good, you can make it. But as far as finding a job, the most important thing is to have as many reps already. If you don't have as many reps, and we're now talking February, you have 3 more months to get as many reps as possible to put together the most diverse possible tape you have, because you never know what part of that reel, demo, whatever you want to call it now, will get you the gig. It could be volleyball, it could be soccer, it could be lacrosse, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be, baseball, basketball, football, which is certainly the most common sports that people are trying to get into. I was on the play-by-play side for most of my career, and covered everything for those main sports to all the Olympic sports as well. And many times I was looking for somebody to call swimming or to call track and field or to call anything like that. And the same, I say, would be hold true for a lot of the regional television networks now, because you have all the conferences and they're broadcasting all of these other sports. So diversity is helpful in what you can do, because being able to call a lacrosse game or a volleyball game or anything like that, or match, I should say, might help you get your foot in the door, and then could lead to other sports. I can speak to several examples I know of where somebody was hired by one of those networks because they could do swimming or wrestling or something that isn't as common, water polo, out in the West, and got their foot in the door, and it led to, hey, can you also do this? Once they did a good job on that one sport. So that's the first thing while you're still in school, but also, I guess, to hone your reels and your demos as to what you're going to send people, what you're going to send them, and to pick out the most important things. And I think Tom and I might differ a little on what we think makes a good tape on this, but I always say, give everybody you're sending to an option of what to listen to, since if it's in front of us on a email and we like one thing, we can click on something else, whether it's your own page or links to broadcasts on other sites. Give us as many options to listen to: short length, long length, all different sports, hosting, Interviews are very important as well. Those are always things I'd listen to because it's not just the actual game broadcast in some cases, or if you're going to be a talk show host, obviously you need to be able to do an interview as well. So those things are important. As far as where to go look for jobs, it's a great question. Everything seems to be online now. There's a lot of sites out there you can go, but certainly if you want to get into the different leagues, they all have everything posted on the bottom, on careers or jobs and whatever, and check back with them constantly because they're updating it every week. Same thing with the conferences, same thing with individual teams, same things um, with any sports entity. If you're looking for specifically like local TV or national TV or radio, that's a little bit more complex to find out about getting jobs. But um, you know, doesn't mean you shouldn't try to find those too. I don't know if Tom, if you or Lynn, if you have ideas on that, because I mean, NBC and CBS and all those, they also have job listings on their particular site, but I don't know if they update it as often as teams and leagues do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump off there. I mean, my world and Howie's older world and some of the new stuff now are different. So in the college world, I'm hiring a lot of independent contractors, and I don't post those jobs on the Learfield.com website because it gets too convoluted with the fact that we have salespeople and marketing people and all the other divisions we have in this $2 billion media data company that they keep telling me about. So most of the time, if I have a full-time job, that's where it's going to be. But honestly, all of my independent contractor jobs are at, staatalent.com and our good friend John. And the reason I put them there is because John makes that job board free. You don't have to have a subscription to go there. And as long as he keeps it free, I'm going to keep putting my jobs there, or I'll put links to my full-time jobs there because I think that's a really good central deposit for this stuff. I would tell you this, as we sit here in February, I wouldn't be thinking about what should I be doing now in February before I graduate. I would have thought about it maybe 2 years ago, to be perfectly honest. I mean, at this point, reps are what's key, and Howie's dead on. If you want to be the voice of football, voice of basketball, voice of baseball, that's great. But don't discount the Olympic sports that give you the reps that make you better, right? Wrestling, we do at a bunch of schools. Water polo, as Howie mentioned, lacrosse, call whatever sports you can, because at this point in your career, you're trying to find who you are. What is your voice? What is your style? And some of these sports, especially water polo, is so fast paced that if you can get yourself in a mode of calling that particular sport, it's going to help you when you go call football, go call basketball. Baseball is a different animal. It's a storytelling, medium. The pace is a little different, but I would not discount any sport possible. I'd go out and call those. The other thing I'd be doing right now is I'd be honing my craft of creating a website. In the past, Howie and I would get packages in the mail with a folder, with a CD, with a resume, and they would stack up in my office. And I feel horrible that every year at the end of the year, some of these things probably got recycled. And that's just good money that, went in the trash. But at the end of the day, if you send me a link to your website, that's what I want to see. And it tells me two things. One, that you're digitally minded. We live in a very digital world right now. So if you're not proficient at social media, if you can't shoot and edit your own social, if you can't build a website right now where your demos live, you're going to get left behind. I'm just being honest, because right now when I'm looking for full-time directors of broadcasting, these are coveted jobs. I'll use Kyle Schasberger at Louisiana Tech. Calling play-by-play is great. And when I get down to the top 10, everybody can call play-by-play at the highest level. What sets you apart from everyone else? What other skills are you bringing to the table that aren't necessarily the basics of play-by-play? Can you build a website? Can you do social media? Can you edit audio and video? Because you have to be a one-person show these days. We don't have enough budgets. I used to give Howie crap in the old days when he was at Westwood One. It's really easy when you got big bags of money and you have nobody to answer to. And I know that wasn't the case, but I'm answering to a lot of people. And, I want to make sure that I'm finding the right people who have all the extra skills that we need inside the college space. So that's key right now. And as you're getting ready to graduate, once again, leading up to your graduation, marketing yourself, going to different events, whether it's, NSMA does a really great event in June, but things like this, that sort of networking is going to be key, because there have been kids that I have met in Salisbury when the NSMA was in Salisbury, who 2 years, 3 years later, I had an opening at a particular school and that person's name came up and I remembered the conversation. I remembered how they were. I remembered their personality. And so it was easier for me to do a deeper dive. Do not discount the quality and how valuable networking is in our business. Now, that doesn't mean stalk us at our homes, send me emails and text messages over the weekend. What that means is find the right opportunities, say hello, introduce yourself quickly, know that there's other people that want to do that as well. But as we get ready to go through all of this, here's a problem in our business right now. And Howie, you tell me if you feel the same. And I'll ask Leon too, because Leon's world is going to be very, very different. Right now, there's more opportunities to call play-by-play than there ever has been, whether it's digital and all these different ways to do it. The problem is the money that came with it didn't grow. It just got shifted to all these other things. So if you're looking to do this and become the next Kevin Harlan, your motivation is wrong. If you're doing this because I want to have a great career, I love play-by-play, I enjoy taking care of the fans, this is what I do, this is what excites me, then you're doing it for the right reasons. And that's the other piece you got to be thinking about as you get ready to hit this career field of ours.
Great advice. Leon, I'll let you jump in. Leon, obviously on the writing side, and I should mention now year 36 for Sports Journalism Institute that he co-founded?
34.
34. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, and if you had told me in 1992, when the Freedom Forum and Al Newhart said that they were going to finance the first few years of the Sports Journalism Institute, but if you had told me that this is going to be your life sentence, I think I would have run out of the room. But it's been amazing dealing with that, because I have seen a lot of young college kids come through the program and have gone on to great things, whether it is at ESPN, New York Times, Washington Post, or what used to be the Washington Post, I guess I can say, and Fox Sports and many other places. But a couple of things I would like to repeat that has already been said. I think Tom said that if you're getting ready to graduate, I hope you started like 2 years ago looking at places. That is so important. One of the things that I tell college students, make friends before you need them. So I pay attention to people on calls such as this, people on Associated Press sports editors calls when we have workshops on students. I pay attention to people that I meet at the different conferences. And the ones who impress me are the ones that I always remember. And one of the things that I tell people, early in your matriculation in college, say, for example, you wrote a great story for your student newspaper, send a link to a sports editor or a hiring manager, say that, I'm proud of this. Let me know what you think about this. Establish a relationship before you apply for a job. And I say that because you need every advantage that you can have. Openings at the Athletic and other places across the country, we have at least 500 to 600 resumes, and that is the start. And we have to whittle it down to 5 or 6 finalists and then down to 1. So any advantage that you have, you need to do. So here are a couple things. If you know somebody on the inside who knows you, like say, for example, you know a writer at The Athletic, an editor at the Athletic that you have met along the way while you are in school. Tell that person to mention your name on the inside, because I or the committee has to whittle down from 600 down to 5 or 6. And usually if somebody on the inside say, I met this young person at a conference and they really impressed me, that person that helps that person at least get into the final stack that we're going to look closely. So I tell people, like I said, make friends before you need them, and then use them when you get to the point when you apply for a job. Now, I did hear earlier, yes, we look more at links than we do at, say, for example, people used to mail clips and things like that. But here's the thing that gets under my skin. When you send me a link that doesn't work, at the end of the day, like such as today, I'm going to look at 2 resumes today. And these are 2 finalists for a position at the Athletic. And if I click on and the link doesn't work, that runs me crazy. So when you email a link, before you email it to me or any other hiring manager, email it to a friend and see if your links work. And so let's just say it works. So here are some of the things that I look for. Diversity in your coverage. So say if I have a college basketball opening, to use that as an example, I don't want you to send me 7 game stories. What I would prefer for you to send me 3 or 4 of your best game stories, your best feature, your best enterprise. And if you want to throw in a podcast, throw in a podcast. When it comes down to the final analysis where we have to make a decision, and usually if you are among the 2 finalists, both of you can do the job. But I only have one job, one opening. And the person who usually gets it is someone who, say, for example, has done something that is a little bit different. I remember a couple of years ago, in the middle of the pandemic, where game stories were hard to come by because college teams were not playing games. They were put on pause for a while, but people were still applying for jobs. And I remember coming across someone's package, coming across their links, and they had done this great story interviewing this kid at college who feels that the pandemic is now going to mess up his career. And this is what he had worked so hard for, and spent a day with him. And they wrote the story in a way where you can feel it. And so that was among their clips. So I always tell people, have at least one surprise in your package that you send to an editor. Now, if you are someone that I met at an APSE conference, or I met on a call, and I write down notes of people, I listen to how they ask questions. If you are someone that I remember, then that's going to stand out when we get to the finals. And so you look for everything that can give you an advantage. And just one other thing that I think that I put a lot of weight on, I put a lot of weight on the cover letter. So you send a note and you write like 2 or 3 sentences and you just say, hey, I'm so-and-so, da-da-da-da. I want to work for your organization, da-da-da-da. I put a lot of weight on what you say. Just give me 4 or 5 paragraphs on why you want to work for The Athletic, or when I was at ESPN, or when I was sports editor at the New York Daily News. Give me 4 or 5 paragraphs. And one word I hate for you to use, and I'll say this and I'll shut up, is don't tell me I have a passion for sports. I want you to show me. I want to read that cover letter, and that cover letter should tell me that I should conclude what that passion is. And I often give this example. I remember this guy who now works at he worked for me at the New York Daily News, went on to work for me at ESPN. He's still at ESPN. His name is Om Youngmisuk. He went to Michigan State. He played tennis for Michigan State. And I remember we had an opening at the New York Daily News, backup Knicks writer and Nets writer, and he was the youngest person in the bunch. And we had interviewed a bunch of candidates. None stood out. And here come Om. He had clips from his days as a freshman at Michigan State. And every holiday, if there was a holiday tournament in Michigan, and he was from Maryland, if there was a holiday tournament in Maryland, he would look at the teams. He would reach out to the sports editor and say, I can string for you. And he got a lot of clips that way. So by the time he gets to the New York Daily News, he had already worked at a couple other places like the Dallas Morning News as an intern. He comes in and blows everybody away. He showed us the passion that he had, that he wants to work in that he wanted to work in the profession. So don't tell me I have a passion for sports. My dad took me to a ball game when I was 4 years old, and I fell in love with it. Don't just tell me that. Show me how passionate you are, because it may be the one thing that stands out, and that could lead to me hiring you or an organization hiring you. So,
Leon, I wish you showed more passion.
If I can add one thing just to tack on, Leon, before you get to the next question. So, and Tom said, he gets hundreds of tapes. When I was at Westwood One trying to hire announcers, keep in mind I was at a national level, so I could hire from anywhere.
Yeah, like me. Usually he's stealing from me, but he won't tell you.
Come on, I took one person from you. You won't let me. And you handed him to me on a platter. Anyway, but I was hiring people, and I always would try and find actually young announcers. And I did hire Brandon Gaudin, who was coming from Butler, Evansville first, then Butler, and now is the voice of the Madden game and on Fox and on the Braves. And I hired John Sadak from Wilmington and Princeton, and I hired young Jason Benetti. So I was always looking for all of those kind of people, in addition to the Kevin Harlans and the Ian Eagles and the Mike Tiricos, which I hired also. But when I was going through all those tapes, and I would have, and this holds true whether it's a story when you're writing or a tape, as much as I would try to, I could not listen to 100 tapes to find one job. I just couldn't do it because I always wanted to be thorough. I didn't want to just listen to 3 seconds or 3 minutes or whatever, because the truth is you need to hear more than 3 minutes to know if they're any good or not. It's hard to do it, but knowing the name or recognizing the name or having somebody know who you are. The one thing on a resume that kills me is references available upon request. I'm not going to request your references unless you really get to the final 2 and I'm having trouble deciding, in which case then I'll say, hey, who can I call about you? Who'd you work with or whatever? Should be on there, because if there's somebody on that list that I recognize, and Tom and I have been in radio, well, not in radio right now, but I was for 35 years. If you worked with anybody in radio and I know them, I'm going to call them, or I'm going to shoot them an email or a text. Say, hey, what can you tell me about so-and-so? And so even if it just gets you from the 100 to the 25 that I actually listen to, you can't get a gig if we don't listen or we don't read your material in Leon's case, right? By the way, writing is just as important for broadcast as it is for print. So I like to see writing samples also, because if you can write, then you speak more eloquently also. If you can't write, you can't put a sentence together, you're not going to be able to put a sentence together live action in a broadcast if you can't put it on paper. Paper is, no offense, Leon, easier because you can edit it, you can fix it, and you can tweak it. Live, you have to be, obviously spontaneous. So writing's important. But my point is, I don't see everybody on the screen here, but I recognize Federico, who came up and talked to me at the NSMA this year in Greensboro, and I recognize Christian's name as well. And so if I saw your names on a pile of 100, just because I recognize the name from you shaking my hand in North Carolina, I would at least explore it further. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. Doesn't mean you're getting an unfair advantage, but at least I will make sure, hey, he came up to me, he said hello, he sent me an email following up, and it makes me at least give you a better chance. Still have to have the goods when I listen. But the other thing I always would do is this. If I would listen and I didn't think you were right for Westwood One, but I thought you were good enough for a local gig at Learfield, I would tell Tom. And Tom vice versa. He would tell me, hey, I got this guy's really good, or I got this woman who's really good. Same thing. Or I would say, you know what? I see you're based here in, I don't know, wherever, Portland, Oregon. Friend of mine runs the radio station in Salem, Oregon, or in Eugene, Oregon. You know what? I'm going to give him a call for you. I'm going to text him, send him your stuff. Maybe it'll lead to something there, even if it's not right for what I had. So the key is to get us to listen and engage with you, because the networking thing, we all know a lot of people. It's not just us. It's a small business, even though it's a big business. Everybody who works at any of these networks all worked with other people at other networks or at other print outlets. Leon already mentioned a few that he was at, and I'm sure those tentacles run wide from even though there's less print than there used to be. Same thing with, it's just, we all know people. And if we like what we see or hear, we can pass it along, because obviously you're too young at this point to have agents to start reaching out to all these other people. So it's important for that aspect. And I know that even when I get emails today from a student, I'm always more apt to try and help a student than somebody who's been in the business for 10 years or whatever. I think we all are. I think we all remember what that feeling was like that you guys are about to go through now or going through. And so I know I had help to get where I was when I was your age. And so I'm always I'm always happy to do it, as are others. But that's important, is to increase your chances. And they said, great line by Leon about making friends before you need them. By the way, what can you do in the next 3 months? If CBS is in your town calling a college basketball game, or Fox is in your town calling a college basketball game, go over and introduce yourself to the talent before, not when they're about to go on the air, 2 hours before, or better yet, go to the shoot around. Go to the practice earlier in the day when they have plenty of time. Introduce yourself, shake their hand, say, could I call you at some point? Can I talk to you? Just some advice, or would you mind listening to 5 minutes of my tape? By the way, it doesn't have to be the on-air talent. It could be the producer as well. It could be anybody. And those people are helpful as well. They know people too. And generally always willing to help. Generally, there are some exceptions.
Coming from a TV background, I'll just throw in, and piling on what you guys said, the importance of diversity in your coverage. So what are we at Essence? And I tell my students at Wake Forest this the first night. What do we do we're all storytellers, whether it's radio play-by-play, whether it's working for the Athletic and writing, whether it's TV. So we just had back-to-back ice and snowstorms here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina over the last couple of weeks, where we were almost shut down. There were no high school games going on because we had no school for 2 weeks. So the two sports reporters and anchors at the NBC station where I used to work, they were on news duty talking about, you go to Mount Airy and tell us what's happening there. And you know what? They did a great job. So I always looked at it, I'm a news reporter first. Sports is my beat. Sports is what I like to do and what I want to do. But you should be as good a reporter as you can possibly be, which to me means a great storyteller. And then, as Howie said, you better be able to write. And if you're going to write well, you should probably read a lot, because reading informs your writing. Writing then informs what you say or ad lib on the air. And then Leon talking about cover letters, I always struggled with those. I worked with a guy who in Providence, my first TV job. His name is Jack Edwards. He was in Greensboro last year as our Massachusetts Sportscaster of the Year. He wrote a cover letter, the best cover letter I ever remember, and it was for a job in Boston, which he got. And I don't remember it verbatim, but it started out, as a kid in New Hampshire, I used to love to go and play hockey on the ponds. And then he went through why I want to work for you. And his hammer at the end was, you open that job and I'll lace up my skates. So he went back to the original premise of playing on the ponds. And it was one of the most eloquent cover letters I've ever seen. I remember it to this day. So learn, even in your cover letter, be a good storyteller. Now, everybody on this call is not a second semester senior in college. Some are younger, some are already out, some have just graduated. The ones who are just graduated trying to find that first job still, or maybe a second job, any advice for them?
I mean, I'll go right back to what we were talking about earlier is, take the opportunities that a lot of people aren't going to take. When you're young and you've got flexibility, you've got energy, you don't need sleep, you eat like crap anyway, so it doesn't matter about your health. Take every opportunity thrown your way. Sometimes I need fill-ins in November. And so I had this Rolodex of people, but sometimes I don't necessarily have anything. So I'll reach out to our play-by-play guys at particular schools. Hey, anybody on the student side that I can use for this women's basketball game or whatever the case may be. And you'll be surprised at the people that come back and go, oh, I'd love to, but yeah, I got this dinner I got to go to. Like, dude, I would shun my family to take one of these gigs. Like I'm going to go do what I got to do. The people that take the time to put forth the effort into this business are the ones that we're going to see on the other side. We're going to see the work ethic, right? Because listen, it's not going to get handed to you. I'm sorry. This is the time of year when Syracuse grads, no offense, Syracuse grad, usually send me an email that say, hey, I just graduated. Where's my job? Well, you better go call single A baseball or, listen, it just doesn't get handed to anybody. It just doesn't. So take advantage of these opportunities. I'll piggyback on what Howie said earlier about, when you meet us, and that sounds really egotistical, but, we're out there. Make it memorable. Right? I can look on this call right now. I had a long conversation with Federico last year about calling games in Spanish versus calling games in English. And what was the advice? Why can't it be both? And what did you do? You went overseas and you did some stuff, and then you got back to me when you got back. Kai, I know Kai every time I see him because he's calling play-by-play in Germany and doing things like that. These are things that stick out, right? So that's what it is. We are a personality-driven world, what we do, right? And I will tell you from the play-by-play side, and this is controversial, when you're calling play-by-play, you're no longer a reporter. You're not, especially if you're going to be the voice of, because you don't get to report on things the way regular reporters do, because you have to protect the team. You have to protect athletics. You have to protect the coaches. Yet at the same time, you have to appease the fan base. So really you're an entertainer is what you are, right? So we need personality. One of my favorite things, and I need to go back and listen. Howie, you may have listened to it already. But when that fan hit the field during the Super Bowl, all I wanted to do was turn on Westwood One and hear Kevin call it, because he calls fans on the field better than anybody I know, because he has personality, right? Listen, we can all call X's and O's and this and that. What sets you apart from everybody else? Your energy, different parts of your personality. One little thing stands out. Like I said, Kai and I had this conversation. It was not even last year. It was before that. It was in Winston-Salem at the Marriott upstairs. Federico and I remember exactly where we were. We were in the bar at Greensboro last year, where a lot of us were. And some people don't even remember those conversations, but that's another story. But at the end of the day, take advantage of these opportunities. And then while I have time, I love cover letters too. But I'll tell you what I love more is attention to detail in your prep, in your delivery, but mostly in how you communicate. If I get one more email to my email address where you address me as Mr. Boman and you put a W in my last name, that tells me you don't pay attention, right? People that are named John, I will double check. Is it Jon? Is it John? These are signs of details, right? just like the broken link that Leon's talking about. We don't have time for all that. I know that sounds really egotistical, but the amount of people that will apply for an open job, and at the beginning, I'm looking at resumes first. I want to see, can you put your stuff together? What does your demos look like? How do you communicate back to me? That's what I'm looking for first. And when people say, what do I study? I go, you should study the English language, how to communicate, how to not use these buzzwords like literally. If I hear literally in another broadcast, I'm going to go shoot somebody. I'm just telling you right now. It's going to be with a Nerf gun, but I'm going to go do it because there's so many different ways to say these things. I worked with Ben Scully. I'm very fortunate. The man was a poet because he knew how to speak. He knew how to do these things. It wasn't the same buzzwords. And it wasn't just, let me throw catchphrases out there. He could speak eloquently when he needed to, and he could figure out other ways. There's a great broadcaster, young broadcaster that we all sort of fought over in the beginning, Carlo Jimenez, who graduated from USC and is now the voice of the Clippers. First of all, if you want to watch good social, go watch his social, watch his TikToks, watch his Instagram. The kid's amazing, right? And he is a kid. He's only been out of school a couple of years. But the one thing about him that impresses me is in his prep, when he sits down, he will literally write out all the different ways to call a layup, all the different ways to call a jump shot. And it's all in front of him because he wants to be able to not use the same verbal crutches that we all have. That's attention to detail. So as you're getting ready to graduate, be thinking about that. Who am I as a broadcaster? How do I speak? Go back and listen to your demos. Where are my verbal crutches? We all have them. I can tell you exactly what mine is if I wanted to show it to you, but you'll probably figure it out at some point listening to this. But attention to detail is key.
When I was at the New York Daily News, someone wrote a nice cover letter, sent me nice clips. It was addressed to Leon Carter, New York Post sports editor. I'm gonna pay attention to detail. And it went into the trash can. Because how do you make that mistake? And it always, I remember it as clear as day. And the trash can was to the left of my desk. And that's where the package landed. One of the things that I hear from young people as I speak across the country, you ask them, what do you like to be? Well, some say, well, I like to be Malika Andrews. I like to be Stephen A. Smith. And I remember when Malika was in the Sports Journalism Institute, she cried when we ripped her first story. This is what you need to do. Look at Malika now. She continued to get better. Stephen A. Smith, I remember Stephen A. Smith, everyone says they want to be Stephen A. Smith. No one wants to talk about when he was at Winston-Salem State playing basketball for Big House Games before he hurt his knee. And then he joined the student newspaper and he lived off of tuna fish and Kool-Aid. Now he could probably buy the Kool-Aid company and the tuna fish company. No one wants to talk about that. And I remember there was a day at the New York Daily News where the deputy sports editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer, I think it was a snowstorm or something, and they could not get someone to Madison Square Garden to cover Temple. And so they called me, and the only person available was Stephen A. Smith. And he raised his hand, and he went to cover Temple and did a great job. To make a long story short, the next thing I knew, the Philadelphia Inquirer was stealing him. He was covering high school for the New York Daily News. They were hiring him to cover Temple basketball for them. Then they sent him to cover backup on the 76ers. Allen Iverson was on that team. He began to, he began a friendship with Iverson. He broke stories that caught the attention of ESPN. Next thing you know, he was on ESPN discussing the 76ers woes, and eventually they hired him. So I say, always raise your hand. I tell young people, start from the position of yes. And I was having this conversation. I'm not going to mention the university, and I'm not going to mention anything that will make you think what the university was. But I was speaking on campus, and this editor of the student newspaper walks up to me, and it's homecoming weekend. And I said, "Do you have everything? Do you have your game plan together?" And she said, "Yes, but I got to find another photographer." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" So the student photographer turned down the assignment because he wanted to party on the yard. And I said, what a huge mistake. You have the rest of your life to party. He needed to put together a nice video package, nice photos that he could use to get a job. But he wanted to party on the yard. Take advantage of everything at your university, whether it is podcasting, whether it is video, whether it's writing for the student newspaper, whether it's working for the radio station. At the end of the day, learn how to write well. You all should be great storytellers, and that will help you whether you're doing play-by-play. It will help you whether you're doing a podcast. It will help you whether you're standing in front of the camera and telling the viewer what just happened. If you had to stand in front of the camera and tell the viewer what happened in that Duke Carolina game this past weekend, which was so great if you're a Carolina fan, I want you to be able to say it in a way that you saw the people how they rushed the court. I want you to be able to recapture that moment for someone who's not at the game. That is a great storyteller. So learn, your first day as a freshman, I would join the radio station. I would join the student newspaper. I would take classes on how to become a better writer. I will also take classes a class or two that will help you become a critical thinker. Always ask why. One of the great TV shows, and probably the older people on the call remember, one of my favorite shows is Columbo.
Love that show.
Here we are admitting that this is how old we are. We get it.
One more thing. One more thing.
One more thing. How many cases did he solve just by asking that one extra question? Well, I also look at it the same way if you are reporting. Don't fold up your laptop thinking that you have the story. There's always one more question to ask that could actually set you apart. This is why you see certain reporters actually following a source as they leave a press conference, because they're looking to get that one thing, that one little nugget that will set them apart.
Let me add one thing, if I may, to what Leon just said. Dave, I know you want to do the Q&A here. I'll be quick. One of the things that he said to you when I said about reaching out to other people that are willing to help you, I don't know how much feedback from your work you get at school. There should be a professor there that hopefully would be able to help you with that. No offense to your family, but asking your family, unless they're in the business, to critique your work is useless, because assuming they love you, they will tell you you're great regardless. Or even if they tell you, something constructive, they're your parents. And when you're that age, you don't believe your parents know anything. I have 2 daughters. I've become the dumbest man on the planet over the last few years since they became teenagers. And now that they're 25, I'm smart again. So don't ask for that. But my point is, get people in the business to be willing to listen to your stuff, read your stuff, to critique it. And every piece of criticism that you get is to help you. I've made a business, which I'm not shilling here for this, but I made a business now of critiquing and helping play-by-play announcers, hosts, analysts, especially athletes coming.
Oh, the universe saved
that out there.
Howie. Oh, damn it.
You just froze for a sec, Howie.
Sorry. I said there's so few ways out there to get feedback from places that you work, even that a lot of people are coming to me that work at networks, that work in small stations, asking for how they could get better. It's something I know that Tom does with all of his announcers at Learfield. It's something that I did with all the announcers at Westwood. And it's a matter of doing it. So there's nothing wrong with you asking somebody else in the business, whether it's a local professional announcer or a local beat writer. Would you mind taking a look at what I wrote for the school paper? Would you mind taking listen to what I said on the radio? And that, by the way, there are plenty of announcers out there, big announcers that are willing to do that also, as long as you're a student. When you're out in the real world and you're gunning for their job, they're not so willing to do it anymore. But when you're a student, especially if it's someone who went to your school, I've never heard of any announcer that wouldn't take a few minutes to, you're not going to send them an entire broadcast. You're not going to send them a 2 hour, or 3 hour game. You may not be able to send them, a whole novel you've written, but you can send them something and get that feedback, because that is really important. How do you get better? The only way to get better at anything is to do more of it, but also to learn what you're doing. You can shoot 1,000 free throws. If you have terrible form, you're never going to get better. So doing reps is great. And yes, there are some things you'll figure out yourself along the way to become a better storyteller, as Leon said. But sometimes you need a path so you don't veer off, to veer off the path.
Great advice. Thank you, Howie. We've got about 10 minutes or so left. Throw up that hand raise icon if you would. I can only see the people who have their cameras open. So if you have a question and you want to ask, make sure your camera's open. Blake Robinson is first. I'll go ahead, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself, Blake. And before you ask the question, Tom, I'll tell you, and actually for all you guys, Blake contacted me before his freshman year at Wake Forest started. He had contacted Bob Rathbun, who gave him my name. So he contacted me. He immediately came in here and started interning. I told him that the Wake Forest club hockey team was looking for someone to do their play-by-play on their live stream. He did that. He's now in his second year at Learfield working on Western Kentucky show. So perfect example. Here is a second semester sophomore. He's already got that experience under his belt. So go ahead, Blake. I'm done bragging on you now.
Thank you, Dave. I was wondering if somebody like me were to get into calling an Olympic sport that, frankly, I would be more unfamiliar with than football, basketball, baseball, and now ice hockey. What is the best way to kind of familiarize yourself with that besides just the mere exposure to listening to the pros do it?
How'd you get familiar with ice hockey? Hold on. You said, and now ice hockey, which means you weren't familiar with it before.
Yeah, I mean, really, that was just trial by fire, really.
Okay. So
and
go
listening.
sit in the stands. Read up on stuff. First of all, watch the Winter Olympics right now, literally as it's going on, right? If there's a sport at your school that you have there, but if not, go back and watch swim meets, track meets, whatever. Read up on it, whatever, and then try and reach out to somebody who actually does those broadcasts and get their thought on it. And because the cadence is very different. Cadence is very different for calling a marathon than it is for a 100-meter dash, right? Or a 200-meter, whatever. And so I think but you go there and you do a fake broadcast that nobody hears. You don't put it on the air anywhere. You just do it. You call it into a recorder and you will be bad. You will be bad. When I was in high school, I went to high school in New York City. Still haven't lost the accent 40 years later. But we used to go to Columbia University and sit in the stands because nobody was there. They were on a record 23-game losing streak when I was in high school. And so we would go sit in the stands and do fake games. I did the same thing at Shea Stadium with Met games because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be play-by-play announcer. And I was terrible. In fact, at one point when the Mets started getting better in the mid-'80s, the people that started filling in the sections, you shut up over there. We're trying to watch the game, But just the point is find the spot, do it. Get the bad stuff out of the way, get your rhythm, get your cadence. But the only way to do it is that way, just like you started to do with hockey. But read the rule book, talk to people, watch. The best part about now, what you guys have the advantage is you can go to YouTube and watch any event from any time at any whatsoever. We didn't have that when I was a student, right? So find Bolt from the 2012 Olympics in London and practice calling it. And listen to other announcers. The reason you're familiar with baseball, basketball, football Yes, you played it probably at some point, but it's not about that. It's because it was in front of you on television and maybe on the radio growing up. So you heard enough of it to get the feel for it. Same thing with these others. Go find them and listen to them and and do it. That's my advice on that. So
Patrick, go ahead and unmute yourself and
Thank you.
go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. I'm actually it's my third year working in the business. So I call junior hockey in the winter, and then in the summer I do high A baseball in Dayton, Ohio for a Reds affiliate. And so I'm kind of exploring what advancement in my career looks like, and just curious maybe what specific advice you could give to, help me get to that next step, whatever that might be.
You doing radio? You're doing television? Combination of both?
It's just radio, what I do right now for both teams.
First of all, hockey on the radio, God bless you, because that ain't easy. I did 1 year of the Thrashers with Pharrell, and that was enough for me.
well, he wasn't a true play-by-play guy. I did the Stanley Cup with Doc Emmerich for many years on radio, so it can be done really well.
Absolutely. Listen, at the end of the day, you got to figure out which sport do you love the most and put that energy there.
Yeah.
Because once you're out working, you start dividing and conquering a little bit, and it kind of spreads you thin. Both of those tracks are going to be hard to get to the highest level, right? And so one of the things you got to remember is, at what point am I going to be satisfied with this career? Meaning, I tell guys all the time, you'll know you're successful when you buy a house, you live on a nice little cul-de-sac, and the neighbor on this side of you is a GM at Best Buy, and the guy on this side has his own paint contracting company. You're in the same socioeconomic type world. You have the cooler job. Right?
Okay.
So think about that part first. Like, really,
But
what do you
he'll have
really
the,
want
he'll
to do?
have, to be fair, he'll have the cooler job no matter who his neighbors are, regardless.
Well, that's a good point. That's true. That's true. But at the end of the day, it's like you set those goals for yourself, and then really it's networking. Baseball's tough, right? You can put together a nice career getting up to the AAA level. I know a lot of those guys, but at the end of the day, it's the hustle, right? It's every single day while you're prepping for that particular game, you need to be looking at what else is happening in the industry, right? Be a student of that. Look at the trades, talk around other people to the league. What other opportunities are out there? In the single A level, don't discount the fact that, and this is going to go against everything we're talking about today. Don't discount the fact that there's other skill sets that you're learning, especially at the single A level, that have nothing to do with play-by-play, that could lead you to a very fruitful career in our world that doesn't involve you being on a microphone.
Okay.
I'm not a play-by-play guy. I was an on-air talent for a long time. I did a bunch of other stuff. I know how to coach talent. I know what needs to sound good because I'm a producer at heart, right? We've done some play-by-play. We've done other things. But right now, I guarantee if you're not writing the notes, emptying trash, selling tickets, something of all the above, and then you get to call play-by-play because that's the carrot they give you.
Yeah.
Don't discount the other things.
Okay.
Because if your only goal is to call play-by-play, then you got to just go hustle. But if you want a career in our world, don't close the door to other opportunities. I didn't make it to this job that I have because I was a great play-by-play talent. I made it to this job because I was a great producer. And I say that carefully. I don't know about great. But I've produced some pretty high-end stuff. And I put the work in because this was the side of the mic that I realized I was going to have longevity, not in front of it. It just wasn't something I wanted to do. But I love producing it. I love making other people sound better. There's a great movie with Dustin Hoffman that none of you guys have ever seen called Wag the Dog. And the greatest line in there, and I know we're not out in public airway, so I can say this, is nobody knows what a producer does until something gets fucked up. That's our job, is to make sure nobody knows about that.
Now I have to edit the recording to put on YouTube.
Let me tack on for that for 1 minute, if I may. I went to Syracuse because I wanted to be the next Marv Albert play-by-play. And I was there at the same time as Mike Tirico and Ian Eagle and many others that you may be familiar with. And so I always joke that I was the 12th best on-air announcer there out of 11 guys at the station. But because of that, I learned how to produce. I learned how to engineer. I learned how to do formats. I learned how to do sales. I learned how to do other things And I realized that then wanted nothing to do with sales, right? But I became a producer because it felt right for me coming out of there, not because I was inferior necessarily, because all the guys actually at the station all went on to successful broadcast careers. But it was a way for me to be more involved. I didn't want to just do every fifth game or every eighth game or every 12th game. I wanted to be at every game. And so I learned how to produce, and that became my passion. That being said, you said Dayton is a Reds affiliate.
Yeah,
Have you met John Sadak?
I just was emailing with him last week, actually.
Okay. Has he been willing to listen to your stuff?
He's very busy right now. He wasn't willing to right now, but I can reach out later.
No, I'm working a game with him coming up, and I hired him in the past. Like, we can chat. Send me a note after this. We'll talk separately
Okay.
about that.
Thank you.
Because like, remember when I said if somebody thinks you're gunning for their job, they may not be as willing. I mean, yeah, you're in the same organization, but there's a difference, obviously. But John, when I first listened to John, he was doing Wilmington Blue Rocks, which was double A, and was doing Princeton women's basketball. So I'll talk to him about it. Not that I can't listen, but he'd be a good person as well because he's come through that same channel and he's in your organization.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Patrick. Federico, you're up. We're trying to get through. We have 4 more questions.
I can stay longer if people need to. It's no problem.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm getting paid by the hour. I'm good.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Go ahead, Federico.
Tom, Dave, it's so good to see you. Leon, thank you for taking the time to speak on the panel. I wanted to ask you a little bit of just kind of my thought process right now. I finished off college in December, and I finished off the last semester in Barcelona. And while I was there, I really took the time to learn about basketball in Europe, just see how the game is played, from the way that it's coached to the rules to just everything that comes with basketball, right? And, now that, I finished all that, I'm really interested in continuing to learn about the game abroad, but in a more, as a job, right? I'm starting to look for jobs overseas. And my question to you is, well, one day I want to come back to the States because this is home. And obviously, the best league of the best basketball league in the world is here. So, my question to you is when you're looking through resumes and cover letters, this applies for the 3 of you. How valuable is that international experience?
It's unique. I like it. I want to see diversity in the way people call games, not just diversity in the way we think about it, but the experiences you've had that are different than a lot of us. It's a little tougher in the college world because when I'm hiring a particular voice, there's lots of different reasons why, ties to a school, ties to a state, ties to that particular market, whatever the case may be. And the pro side may be a little different, but I personally, and I'll let Howie and Leon jump in, I like to see diversity in what you've done, not just the normal bread and butter stuff. So I don't think it hurts you at all.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have something that distinguishes you from someone else. I have seen resumes from students who have graduated, and somehow along the way, they have international experience. I know of a student right now who is in Milan covering the Olympics for an outlet. I mean, she got an internship. So that's going to go a long way when she begins applying for a job. So I really look for those things. I remember looking at resumes of, say, for example, a student who was covering the Kentucky Derby. So in addition to looking at all the other stuff that they have done, this was covering the Derby, and that clip stood out because you remember when you are sitting down, or at least from my perspective, you're reading several resumes. And I remember there was a time last year with between the Sports Journalism Institute resumes and the Leon H. Carter internship program at the Athletic resumes. There was one weekend I read, no, I couldn't get it over. Couldn't get it done in one weekend. There was a 10-day stretch where I actually read over 500 resumes. So now at the end of it, what are the ones that stood out? And the ones that stood out we're the ones that had something that no one else had. So, international experience, diversity, diverse experience at your college, campus, radio station, newspaper, podcasting, and reporting. What makes you ask yourself this one particular question? What do you have that will distinguish you from everybody else who is applying? And an international experience is actually very, very important for us, because we even have a UK office, and we actually have 100 people employed over there. So we actually have interns in that office. So you're actually looking for people who know how to cover international teams. So I think it's a plus if you have those things.
Let me add one thing, Dave. So
Sure.
if those of you who are not graduated, and I don't know if that's 1 or 4 of you or whatever, or 10 of you, but at the Super Bowl, I was just at the Super Bowl in San Francisco, and there's a thing called Media Row where they have all the different radio stations, podcasts, and whatever broadcasting from. Well, at Super Bowl 48, when it was in New York, I worked together with Syracuse University and Fordham University, and they had some students, because of the location, come to Media Row and broadcast from there. And every year since then, Syracuse has been sending several students, Dave, you're probably aware of this, sending students to do a broadcast from there, and they go out and, they covered all the different stories throughout the week, and they do live hits from the stadium, and they do interview with former Super Bowl heroes and stuff like that. And this year, now I was in charge of a lot of media. It used to be called Radio Row. Now it's Media Row because it's not just radio anymore. But when my last couple of years at Westwood, I was in charge of working with the league and putting all the people on that row and who was where and whatever. And it got up to 4 student stations a year. It was St. Bonaventure, it was Syracuse, it was whatever. This year there were 12 student stations at Media Row. And it's in San Francisco, and it wasn't like they were all West Coast stations. I mean, they were mostly East Coast stations, honestly, but they were all there. And so if you get a tape, and I watch a tape of a student and they're reporting live with Levi Stadium behind them with the Super Bowl logo on it, that stands out different. And this is no offense, Blake, because you're the only one I know who goes to school where you go to school right now. And I know Dave teaches there, but it's different than just doing a stand-up in a Wake Forest campus with a stadium behind you, because it's just the magnitude of it. It's different. We're not getting that from everybody, right? So if you're still in school, my point is you might want to go to the Super Bowl next year and cover it there, because they're now allowing students to do that. You may not be able to, you don't get a pass to go to the locker room after the game and interview a player, but you could be there during the week on this thing and doing this. And so that's just one way of adding something to your resume, reel, tape, print, whatever it is you're doing. That just, when Leon was talking about it, it struck me as, oh, you know what? Here's something that I just experienced.
Thank you. Brannigan, good to see you. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question if you would.
Thank you guys for having me and hosting this, and let me learn a lot of good information. So I'm coming from more a perspective of, I've already graduated a couple years ago, did history, loved that, but not really what I want to do, not really viable. So I more so want to hear your guys' input from approaching this profession, after you've gone to school. How are some ways you can start to help yourself? Is going back to school something that would be good, getting like a master's or something to that effect?
So I will tell you that getting reps.
Okay.
So here's a great example. If you got a junior college somewhere close to you or a high school close to you that don't usually do their games.
And I do right now. I do work with a couple high schools. I do football and basketball for them. So
I was gonna say, do you have hands-on experience from when you were in school? Okay.
No, I didn't.
Afterwards?
Afterwards, yes. I didn't do any of this kind of stuff in school.
But you're currently calling games. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and where are you based?
I'm in near San Antonio.
Okay.
So I go to New Braunfels, Texas, a couple high schools there.
High school football there. And the reason I asked that is because high school football there is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
different than calling high school football in Vermont, for example. If there's anybody here from Vermont, I apologize. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying.
No,
Okay.
I agree, and I New Braunfels especially because at some point my seventh grade grandson's going to play high school football in New Braunfels because that's where they live. So who knows? Maybe you'll call this game. But at the end of the day, it's reps, right? So here's an example. I've had guys that are trying to get to the next level who were doing women's basketball at a particular university. They're not the voice of a big university, and they're trying to get to their next step, a mid-major job. But they were able to go in on a regular basis and call games in a booth or up in the stands and have some effects and things like that. And so I know what they're going to sound like calling football games, whether those games are on the air or not, right? So it's really about reps. It's about getting your muscle memory into a point where when you call games, you're not thinking about, oh, I got to do this, I got to do the score, you want it to be this muscle memory, right? So at the end of the day, if you're already calling games at the high school level, great, keep doing that. And then see where you can expand, right? Expand that maybe the talent level on the field or on the court is a little elevated. I would never call a game down to the level that I'm doing. In other words, I wouldn't call your high school game and just call it like a high school game because it's a high school game. I would call it the way you want to call a game. Now, maybe not Super Bowl level, that would be a little odd, but you know what I'm saying? Like call it to that level. It's same way like in the world when a client comes to us and says, we'd like to have a spec spot, and some radio stations get some Joe Schmo that's available to cut the spot. And they go, this is sort of what it would sound like. Why? You know, cut the spot the way it should air, right? Immediately. Same thing with your play-by-play. Go do that now. I'm not telling you not to go back to school, but I will tell you this, you're going to get a little farther, in my opinion, by doing it, right? Get out there, call the games, make some relationships. When guys like me, because I can't listen to everything every single day, I will refer people to our other play-by-play voices. Wyatt Thompson at K-State is a great resource. He loves to help out young people, right? Things like that. So it's not just guys like Howie or me or Leon that can help you. It's your peers, and your peers can be one level higher than you, 5 levels higher than you, just somebody that's bigger than you. But if every opportunity you have to call games, that's where your education is going to come from, in my opinion. I was going to jump in.
I'll tack in on one thing. I see Lane wants to talk too. I agree that you shouldn't go back to school if you can get hands-on stuff. But let me clarify. I don't think that means going back to a university or college that is just for whatever degree in broadcasting. The classes are not going to help you. Now, if there's a place nearby you that has a broadcasting school that gives you hands-on with equipment and doing some of that stuff, even like a trade school for broadcasting, that's different. That can't hurt. That can only help. It's also not as expensive as a university to go for a master's program or something like that. But unless you're getting into, the Cronkite School or Newhouse or somewhere else for a college master's program, I don't think any of that is more valuable than hands-on, going to games, practicing, or even offering your services to free as a quote-unquote pseudo intern for some local TV or radio station just so you can learn. Make friends with the sports director at WOAI in San Antonio and say, hey, can I just come sit in the studio one day and listen to a Spurs broadcast and see how I think they do the broadcast, whoever does the sports broadcast, right? I just want to see how you guys do it. I want to learn how you guys make those broadcasts sound so good. That's different, and that's more valuable than sitting in most classrooms around the country, and certainly, like I said, less expensive, in my opinion.
And I say this to you, and I say this to others on the call. At some point, a lot of people go through what you're going through after a couple of years out of school, and they want to do X, Y, and Z. And I do agree, if that's what you want to do, you got to get the reps. I don't think you should go back to school. But the one question that I always ask people, and you have to ask yourself, how much do you love this? You have to love this profession, whether it is play-by-play, whether it is reporting, writing. Most people don't get rich doing what we are doing, unless you're Stephen A. Smith. But many do make a great living, and you can live in that cul-de-sac and be the coolest person on the block. But you also have to ask yourself, how much do you love doing this? You know, as I tell people, there was one time I had to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning because the Mets fired Willie Randolph on the West Coast, and it's only midnight. It's only midnight here in New York. And the writer, who was a great beat writer for me at the New York Daily News, he could not reach the overnight sports editor. So I get the next call, and he's calling me, and the only thing that I can hear on the phone is the word fire. And I'm thinking that the house is on fire. So I'm getting up out of the bed, and I'm grabbing things. And then I figure out the Mets just fired Willie Randolph. He had the story, he had the source confirmed, and nobody else in New York City had it at that particular moment. So I said, send it to me. I'll edit the story. I get up, I walk across the house, and I go to the home office, edit the story. This is 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm now wide awake. And by 3:30, the story is posted. The New York Daily News at 3:35, we're getting credit on WFAN. New York Daily News is reporting that Willie Randolph had been fired. Around 3:55, the New York Post, I shouldn't even give names anyway. Anyway, another outlet says it has been reported that Willie Randolph has been fired. But that gave me a buzz all day because we were first. And that's what we want to do in this business. So I always say, now I loved every minute of it, even at 3 a.m. in the morning. But you have to ask yourself, and each of you, each student on the call, no matter what you want to be, play-by-play, in front of the camera, newspaper reporter, or digital reporter, you also have to ask yourself, how much do you love this? And then you give everything that you can give and get those reps that will be so important for you to get the job. And I also say, find someone who is, and some of you, it sounds like you're doing this, find someone who is doing what you want to do and pick their brains and set up a meeting and continue to do that. But all of you should ask yourself, how much do you love this? And that will help you determine how far you go in this.
Do you love it enough to work weekends, every holiday, or most holidays, depending on the sport you're in?
Nights,
and that's, if it doesn't bother you, great. When I left Westwood One, because in the state of California, where I was living at the time, you get paid for every holiday you worked when you're no longer, they owe you back the holiday. They owed me weeks and weeks of holiday pay because sports happens. There's the NFL on Thanksgiving and Christmas and all of that other stuff, right? And I didn't care about it, by the way. I would have done it for free, right? Because I wanted to be at the games. I wanted to work the games. I wanted to work, Memorial Day, every year I was doing the NCAA lacrosse championship, wherever that was. And so it didn't matter to me. I just wanted to be at an event. I got into this business because I wanted to go to as many games as I could for free. I didn't care what the game was. I didn't care what the sport was. But there is a sacrifice of doing that in many cases. If you just do baseball, well, okay, it's Memorial Day, July 4th, and Labor Day. If you're doing football, it's Thanksgiving and Christmas, and some cases Labor Day. And if you're in the playoffs, it's Martin Luther King Day, and it's whatever. You get the idea, but you have to want it enough, enjoy it enough, and you're also away from your family a lot too. You're too young to have a family, but
you will miss friends' weddings. You will miss going out with your buddies. You will miss a lot of stuff. And take that into account.
But it's still the coolest job on the block.
And you'll still be the coolest kid in the cul-de-sac.
I try to hire very unpopular kids to work for us who are available on a regular basis.
I can tell you, I was at a wedding. I was at a wedding of a former athlete. It's probably 10 years ago, and I'm at a table with a senator, a heart surgeon, a district attorney, and I forgot the fourth one. And everybody only wanted to talk to me about my job. Mm-hmm. Nobody cared about any of the other people. They always wanted to talk to me about my job.
Yep.
Today would be the senator. Sorry. Ty, thank you for your patience. You have the last question.
Thank
Yep,
you.
no problem. Just want to just say, listen to these guys, everything they said, 100% correct. Like I've been out of school, like from the University of Maryland. I'm doing my master's right now here in Germany. That's another story. But whenever I come back and see friends, like I hung out usually with the nerds and like they're the engineers, they did this and that, but they don't talk about engineering when I'm at the table. When I'm at the table, it's like, so what's going on in German sports? And it's like, well, let me tell you. And seriously, like that's what happens. And going along with you're going to work at all crazy hours. Like I was working at the German version of Associated Press in the middle of the night for several weeks. And then they said, hey, by the way, time for you to move to Australia. And I was like, okay, cool. I guess it is time for me to move to Australia. So I moved to Australia. I covered like the Women's World Cup in the middle of the night. And then there was like one time where it was like UN General Assembly and the German Chancellor was speaking. And oh, by the way, World Series is going on at the same time. So you're going to translate the Chancellor's speech auf Deutsch zu English. Okay, cool. All right, great. That's going to be interesting. And by the way, you're also going to do stuff about the World Series. I mean, it's the championship game. We don't know about the World Series. You're the only American here. We need your help. It's like, gotcha.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. That's
Go
what
to
you got
where
to
the
do.
go to where the work is. I tell
Mhm.
young people all the time, when you're in your 20s, it's the greatest time.
Yes.
Don't buy stuff you can't put in your car. We all have that one floor lamp. You can put that in the back seat because it breaks up into 3 parts. Don't get a pet. Don't get a girlfriend. Don't get things that are going to anchor you down, because once you do, your passion now has to become your secondary. There's an arc to our careers. There's guys that on the way up, you're doing everything. This is your path. This is your path. And then at some point, life hits you, right? And now you're doing this because you love it, but you're not willing to move state to state to state. And so that arc starts to change a little bit. Right now, you guys are on this upward arc, right? Except for like me and Howie and Leon, our arc's already passed. But at the end of the day, you have to understand the sacrifice. It's no different if you want to be a chef or you want to be an actor or any of these careers where making it is tough because so many people want to do it. What sets you apart? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to sacrifice? I'm telling you, my beginning in radio career, I learned everything. I learned how to engineer broadcasts at a sports station. I learned how to do everybody's job there. That way, when I needed another job, I had other options, right? I can engineer broadcasts. I can do the traffic. I can do imaging. I can do all of that stuff. And I did that in my 20s because I wasn't worried about stuff. I was divorced. My kids were living with their mom. Now it's time for me to sacrifice so I can better their lives. And that's when I did it.
Mm-hmm.
What are you willing to sacrifice? And then you'll get to a point where we all are, where you don't have any other marketable skills and this is what you're stuck doing. And that's okay too. We like that.
And just want to add on, like, if anybody wants to send me their stuff, I just put in my email again in the chat, just in case. If anybody there wants to send me their broadcasts, send me their articles, I'll take a look at it. I'll tell you what I like, what I don't like. I can't really help you too much with like networking unless you really want to come to Germany. And you already know German and you're near fluent or already fluent, then I can help you out there. But if not, don't worry. This isn't a test in Germany. But so anyways, so the thing is, what I want to ask is it's not quite as much as not quite as on topic as tonight, but the thing is, like, I've been living in Germany now for 10 years, except for the 6 months when I was in Sydney, Australia. So what I'm trying to figure out is how can I get like the Americans to, or my fellow Americans, to get more interested in international things, because like I can go to the table and with my friends and say, hey, here's what's going on in German soccer, here's what's going on in Swiss ice hockey, because I also cover that. I also cover Portuguese soccer, and I also cover German basketball. It's like here's all the stuff that's going on there. But if I were to go to somebody on the street and I say, hey, I do all that, they just go. At least that's how it feels to me.
You're talking about for like, how do you market yourself now back in the States?
Yes, like, and I'm also more than happy to come back to the States, every now and then. Like, I'm willing to, more than happy to come back for,
Oh, in other
the
words, how
market to.
are you going to market yourself for jobs where you are in Germany? Is that more where you're getting at?
Uh, yeah, like I mean, like staying here in Germany, but like trying like for example, like the Champions League final is taking place in Hungary. That's an hour flight away from me. That's like Europe's Super Bowl. That's I can get to Budapest in an hour. That's no well in the air.
No,
But
I get
I
all
can
that, but
I can
I guess what I get. Give me the Reader's Digest. Got to be more direct. See, this is part of it too. And I'm not picking on you, but I'm going to use this as a
no,
critique.
no, it's good.
If you like, I'm lost right now. So
Yeah.
all this stuff in the periphery, if you really want to hone in on your craft, we need to be in bites, right? And this can be
Yeah.
for everything. Your
Yep.
play-by-play, everything else. The stories are great. Like, hey, the guy had a single mom and he played catch with me behind on the barn, blah, 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 blah. Down in distance, time, and score. That's what I get. That's what I care about, right? So in this
Right.
particular conversation, hit the point. How are we going to help you?
So I'm just curious, how can I show off myself abroad, but to the US?
I think it's the same way. I think it's marketing yourself. It's the networking that you have. I mean, right now you have email addresses for Leon and Howie and me. You've had mine before. We've corresponded back and forth. I don't think it's any different where you are. The problem's going to be, I don't know how many jobs Howie knows about in Europe, and I don't, unless one of our teams plays over there. But it's, to me, if you're trying to market yourself back into the States, then it's us. If you're trying to market yourself to Europe, then you're going to have to go ping the brains of the people at these bigger clubs and things like that to say, hey man, I'm from the US and I know there's a big US audience over here for stuff. Where do you think I should hit? Like, whether it's F1 or, all these other things, right? Because there's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of stuff from Europe here that you could do here that is focused in Europe. Like, I'm a big F1 guy, right? You can cover F1 and be in the States. There's outlets for all that, right? Same with Premier League and all those things. So you just got to market yourself. It's the same.
I will say this. Where in Germany are you, Kai?
So I'm just south of Cologne.
Gotcha. So, I mean, look, the NFL's playing there twice a year, or at least once every year. So they're coming in for stuff. And there's a lot of entities that come out there doing the broadcast of the games and always need help, whether it's the televising network, the radio network. Federico actually ended up working a game in Spain for Westwood One because I connected him with my former crew. And so, the league, the NFL, that is probably going to have an office in Germany pretty soon. So they already have one in London, and they're doing more and more international. And so, I mean, those things are growing. I mean, that once a week isn't enough to do anything, but you never know what that could lead to. And so you can certainly, when they announce, and this will probably be right after the draft, I would think in May, like, all right, NBC or CBS or Fox or whomever Netflix will broadcast the game next year between so and so and so and so in Berlin or Munich or wherever it is. Then you got to try and say, hey, I live out here. I can do this, I can do that. Do you need help on the crew? I mean, even if it's something as simple as, helping the audio tech run all the cables, at least it's kind of, it's something. Stats, spotting, whatever it may be on the broadcast, at least for that. And there's going to be more and more going there.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a tip now too. So I have some friends that are building the European Football Alliance, right? Former player and stuff. Some friends of mine they're actually talking to me about young broadcasters that might be able to do some games during the summer, things like that. But it's all based over there. So I'd go to their website, look at their contact stuff, and reach out to those guys because they're basically bringing more American football to Europe. Most of that stuff's going to be called remote from here. But if they're going to call remote, whether you're in the States or there, it's still a remote. It's still a REMI. So, these are the opportunities that are out there that no one's even thinking about. I was thinking about it as you brought up Europe because we just had a call about it last week. But it's the European Football Alliance. So you might want to check that out.
Yeah, I was actually a commentator for the European League of Football for a few years.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, so that's the thing. You have all these. I would exploit the hell out of the contacts you have.
I'll say this to you too. Westwood One ended up hiring a guy from London this year to call the games in London because rather than traveling somebody over there. Now, I don't know your skill set is that, good to be on Westwood One yet or national, whatever. But the point is, when they're sending people overseas, everyone's trying to save the money. That's the point of the remote broadcast in general. But there might be something there too, depending. I
Wonderful.
put my
Thank you.
email in the chat, by the way, if anybody wants to follow up with me afterwards. And I saw Tom just did too. So
Well, I figured if you did, I might as well.
yeah. So Leon, you might want to add yours too for everybody.
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you.
And while he's doing that, that gives me the opportunity to thank you three gentlemen for giving not just an hour, but an hour and a half today. So I appreciate your time, and I know these folks did as well. And thank you guys who came on to hear their wisdom. I appreciate you guys too. And as I just put in, don't forget, talk about networking. Our 66th Awards Weekend and Convention is June 28th and 29th in Greensboro at the Grand Over Resort. I like to refer to it as the largest gathering of sports media where no one is on a deadline, which means they are free to talk to you. And I don't think
more hot air in that hotel for that weekend than anywhere else.
Turn down the thermostat always. And I'm going to post that on our website. I haven't posted that yet. I sent it to our membership, but
I will definitely be there. How are you coming this year?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing next week yet. I'm still trying to figure out with the new museum in Las Vegas, which by the way, now is I'm using my storytelling skills there. That's storytelling of a different kind of sports museum. By the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out Tony Britt sitting here on the call.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to say the same thing.
For those of you doing broadcasts, a lot of times when I hear young broadcasters, I hear them filling with useless information that shouldn't be on the broadcast or not giving me information that should be on a broadcast. If you're not sure what should be on your charts or what should be in your notes or what you should be researching for what belongs on a broadcast and what doesn't, talk to Tony. Tony provides charts to the best broadcasters in the business for a reason, and they trust him to help with their research and what they have in front of them for any broadcast. And so I know it's at a smaller level when you're doing, again, I'm not picking on you, Blake, but Wake Forest versus the Super Bowl, which Mike Tirico is doing, totally different. But he can probably help. He can definitely help you with streamlining what you should and shouldn't have in a broadcast, and should be a resource. It's been a great addition to something that nobody ever had before with his spotting charts and everything else and his research notes for people, because they can take all this big giant pile of stuff and put it into the stuff you actually need and can use and make your broadcasts better, no matter what level you're at.
Just added his email address on the chat if you missed it. So.
People always ask me, how do these guys know everything? Oh my gosh. Well, with the advent of everyone doing booth cams like we do a lot, people are starting to realize how that magic happens. And it's guys like Tony Britt and their companies. There's lots of guys that do great charts on their own. They've learned it the hard way. But I'll tell you what, invest in yourself. Like if you were an electrician, you would invest in some really good Klein tools. If you were a contractor, you'd have Milwaukee tools. If you're a broadcaster, Tony Britt spotting charts. That is a tool to add to your toolbox. I kid you not. Yes, it costs real money. It does, because Tony's people do a great job. But and you can see these things. Tony, I know, was there last year in Greensboro. I don't know if you're going to be there this year. I'm assuming you might. He does a great job of showing these things off. But I will tell you, some of the best broadcasters I know rely on Tony Britt and his people to put these things together. So sometimes you have to invest in yourself, and that's one key right there.
Gentlemen, you're too kind. Thank you for the kind words. Good to see you both.
Just speaking the truth.
That's right.
Good to see everyone. My dog needs to go out because my wife went out to dinner. So with that, I will thank you all once again.
Oh, that's not a euphemism. That's a real thing.
That is correct. And I will hope to see you all soon. Thank you, guys.